All right, hi, I'm David Petersen.
I'm Jesse Glenn.
And we are two artists looking back and revisiting our earliest characters and stories in the Plotmasters project.
Yes.
How many of you have actually seen episodes of the Plotmasters project?
All right.
All right. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, it's a video podcast series where we do this. It's on YouTube. You can also just look it up on theplotmasters.com. Jesse and I have known each other since I was 11 years old. Jesse's dad was the scoutmaster of the Boy Scout troop that I joined. Jesse's 3 years older than me, and he was already in that troop. And we bonded over the Ninja Turtles at scout camp. A couple years later, when I got into high school, it was the first time that we would actually sync up and be in the same school at the same time. And I think from that point on, we were rarely separated at the shoulder because we were side by side drawing characters and stories and coming up with our own concepts and stuff.
All the time, every day, just about.
So we want to talk about a couple examples of the things that we did back then that we are now revisiting during the Plotmasters project and kind of categorize those into different ways of approaching doing revisions. And the first one of those is long-term revisions. The first episode of the Plotmasters project is Cat's Trio, and it was the first thing that Jesse and I ever worked on. This was something that we started in 1990, and we continued to work on together through the 90s, maybe even up until about 2000 we would continue.
Roughly, yeah.
This is that long-term thing where there was a lot of time for us to go from these early drawings and comic pages into even revising just a few years later and trying to come up with a new style, a new way of telling the story, fix flaws.
Yeah. Because this was something that we bonded with each other on early. We stuck with it for a very long time, and it actually underwent several modifications over the years. And so it's just like, and we would kind of take turns almost. It's like, well, it's been sitting for a while, and it was like Dave feels like, well, I'm going to kind of redraw these and draw them like this. And then it would sit for a while, and it's like, we haven't done anything with that in a while. Maybe I'll redraw it and I'll draw it like this. So it's just that this particular project is one that has stuck with us throughout like all of the years. Just
yeah,
you know.
And because of that, even before we started the Plotmasters Project podcast, this was one that had gone through all of these different incarnations. Things where I tried, like, maybe we get rid of the anthropomorphic angle. Maybe we go with just straight up animals, which actually was a mistake. It lost some of the charm of what drew us to the project in the first place. It was our Ninja Turtles. And then just recently, if you've watched the episode, Jesse did a retake on them and drew them as such. You got anything to say about that?
In this one, in some of the things that we're exploring in the Plotmasters project, sometimes we're trying to stay true to the original idea. Sometimes we're kind of deviating or giving it a new spin. With this one, it was more an effort to capture the energy of the original, stay as true as possible to those characters, just really give it an updated look and feel. And that's kind of what I stuck with this one.
Yeah, and I did the same. I felt like of all the projects that we were working on, this was one that we kind of we left something behind. We owed it to these characters to give them something proper. So I did mine as though it was a cover, and I just tried to do the ultimate version, taking all the various incarnations and trying to be as faithful as possible. It wasn't so much a redesign as just being true and honest to it. But it's kind of like as if you were approaching something like Batman. There have been so many incarnations of Batman. If you think about Batman, that's a long-term development. And so now when somebody approaches Batman, they have all that history to fall back on and to try to pull from and use as inspiration.
One of the other things to explore in looking back at old projects and what you want to do, just having a span of time from when you created something to looking back and working on it now, you've gained experience, you've gained skills, you've read other materials, you've studied, and your art skill and quality improves and your art style changes. It's just something that happens naturally over the years.
Using another example from that's actually gone up live on the website, Jesse's character Quietus was kind of a quintessential 90s anti-hero superhero chick. And
I had picked up this issue of a comic. I don't even remember what it was. It was an independent publisher. It was black and white. It was gritty and gruesome, and there was this character with really scribbly hair. It's like, I want a character with scribbly hair. And so that's what I made. And I wasn't sure exactly what to do with her, but I liked her. So I kind of hung on to that character for a while.
And in these days, like 93, I remember being around Jesse, and I was doing the same thing. We were learning how to draw human anatomy by looking at Jim Lee and Whilce Portacio and all the Image guys, and we were learning how to draw that way. And then years later, now that we've actually had some experience learning from live models, learning from drawing from life, learning the actual anatomy, just maturing as an artist, just redrawing the character is enough to redevelop it. My take on Quietus from Jesse's original drawing, I didn't really change much about her costume. I did very little. But just the way that I draw now versus the way I drew then meant that the character developed. It got better.
Yeah, you can see some of the stylistic and coloring qualities that you can see in Mouse Guard, like in that picture that you carry over. Yeah. And then with mine, of course, when we started out drawing, everything was done on paper. And it's like with papers and pens and markers and colored inks. And these days, we're working digitally. So that's affected things. And so when I did this, I had a better grasp on, being older and being more experienced, have a better grasp on anatomy. I've developed my own style because I've been drawing more regularly. And so I applied that, and working digitally, it has a different look and a different feel. And I just really only updated the costume a bit. I wanted her to have something more athletic and sporty, other than just what was this more gothic look of the original, but essentially leaving the character unchanged. It's just a matter of growing art.
And while there was there could be an argument that there was a stylistic choice for when Jesse drew her back then, that the costume was mostly just a flat black. There was very little interior contour. That could have been a stylistic choice, but I'm willing to bet that part of that was...
I don't really want to fuss with the anatomy that much because it looks wonky. So
you don't feel confident with the anatomy.
If it's all black. And so this, for the black parts of the costume for this, it's like as you learn and as you grow, it's like I don't have to color that all black. That's shades of gray to imply a dark outfit, but you can still see the form.
There's a form. Another version of art maturation, I did a board game when I was in college, and you have these playable characters that you start the board game with, and I drew these in college in my sketchbook. They were kind of archetypes on D&D characters that either we had played or just thought kind of filled gaps of things we never played. And I did these with watercolor pencil and probably ballpoint pen. And not too long ago, I tried to do a little update, mainly so that when we pull this game out every New Year's Eve or so at my house, and while the rules of the game and the functionality of the game is still a bit embarrassing,
it's a little broken.
It was also embarrassing to keep looking at this artwork, having my friends show up and go like, check out this art, it's not very good anymore. So I did some updates to the characters, and I didn't really change them, I just drew them better. I had learned. So the barbarian character, Fike the Mox, I just went as Tony DiCerlisi and world building and fantasy sword and sorcery as I could, and I tried to make him the ultimate barbarian character. Dalton Maddock, who was the dwarven armorer, I drew some really lame, cheap armor in the original version, and now that I know more about those kind of things and my skills have improved, I thought I could even design the armor to be something different than I had seen from other fantasy armors. Tyne Mossbrook is a druid, and I had that very clean piping on her old costume, and I thought that should almost look organic. It should look like it's grown onto her. It's part of nature. That's who she is. And Madeline the Paladin, who became Madeline Chevalier, same kind of thing. I could design the armor and pay homage to the original design with the weird little tuft on the top and the kind of triangle thing on her brow, but make it look like it makes sense. And all that's because I've just spent whatever the time in between is, 15 years or so, drawing, practicing. Oh, and then the most drastic change was I took a silly concept of a gnomish ninja, which I had just drawn as a ninja, and thought, what would an actual gnome look like
the ninja has ears, come on,
if they were a ninja?
Genre shift. Yeah, sometimes when you have an initial project you're working on, you have this idea, you have this grand scheme in your head, and you work on it, and sometimes it doesn't work out for you. It's like, I don't know where I was really going with this. I'll move on to something else. Okay, and we did that a lot. But again, a lot. Looking back at these again, it's like, well, let's revise it. Let's take that and see what wasn't working with it, and maybe it was something about that core element of the genre. Maybe it was something, it's like, we started with this, but maybe if we took it in a different direction, if we tweaked this, we dropped this part out, it's self-editing. It's like, I really wanted to do this, but it's not working with this, so I have to kill that.
Maybe I like the characters, but I have them in entirely the wrong setting.
Yeah, and so sometimes things will just change a bit.
So this is a preview of the episode that's going to be dropping on Monday. This was my rooftop vigilante alter ego character in high school. The reason he has that coat is I had that coat. The red t-shirt, kind of my uniform. And for Halloween, my sophomore year of high school, I actually made that mask. And for the remainder of high school, just as a gag, I kept it in my coat pocket and would occasionally just whip it out and start to put it on like I was gonna go fight crime, just to get my friends laughing.
Yeah, just regularly as we were walking around the neighborhood anywhere, it's like, it's time to fight crime, let's go. Who's with me?
Unfortunately, the mask is lost to history. I still have the coat though. I actually wear the coat in the episode. But so yeah, the character was this. He was Batman and Spider-Man and Spawn, kind of all in one, but a high school kid, and it's pretty obvious in the drawing, right? At some point, Jesse did a redesign where we thought about, like, what if we put Black Cat in a team? What if he was a team character? And it's like, well, that's a very different shift. You take a vigilante rooftop character and then put him in a team dynamic, and things totally change. Batman by himself is different than Batman in the Justice League.
Yeah, and with this one, it was because we're constantly basing characters off of friends of ours and whatnot, and so it's like each one of those characters represents somebody. And also at the time, I was exploring art styles, and I was kind of mimicking Sean Galloway at the time, just so that really strung out, skinny Spider-Man look for Black Cat. So I applied that to it and threw those extra characters in there to just put Black Cat in a different world for a moment.
Just to see what sticks, to see if that dynamic change helps.
Yeah. So when I went for my newest version for our podcast, I wanted to keep a little bit of both. But I stuck with the slick, action-y suit, Black Cat. Just gave him some elements of technology. And I wanted to keep it simple. Like, when I was thinking about it, he's just a guy. He doesn't have superpowers, but he's a little bit athletic, and he's got his powers of luck or whatever. But like the ears and the goggles that he has, I imagine those as being repurposed. It's like maybe he's got the Google Glass in his goggles, and those are those cat ear headphones. He's just got microphone sensors stuck in them so he can use them to hear long distances. Just like, what could somebody practically just rig up for themselves and give some character to? Yeah.
And something that after now 3 episodes of the Plotmasters project I realize is one of my flaws is I tend to just stay safe and not actually redesign, but just do the proper homage. So I went with the total high school kid. That is a t-shirt, those are jeans, that is a pulled on mask. Nothing redesigned from my original other than I can draw it better now. But the reason I put this in the genre shift category instead of the art maturation category is that there was a point in the 2000s where I thought the way to get out of the silly rooftop vigilante cliche thing was to totally shift the genre, and instead of making this a superhero story, almost make this a spy espionage story. Black Cat's powers have to do with, you're not supposed to, it's unlucky if a black cat crosses your path. He absorbs your luck. He gives you bad luck, and he gets luckier the more people he crosses. So I thought he's the perfect jewel thief spy for an espionage team. And I had some other characters that I could redesign. It's a happy face assassin that was essentially a ripoff of The Mask. I decided to give kind of a cool, spy suit thing too, and he's Scam the Happy Assassin. And a character named Squire, who really the only thing I kept was that it was a guy named Squire and had no nose that a friend of mine made for a role-playing game, I decided was the demolitions expert. So between them you have the thief, the assassin, and the demolitions guy. And we decided not to cram all of that into the episode. So the episode that'll drop on Monday is only the vigilante version, and at some point we're going to do a second episode where we kind of re-explore this espionage spy version of Black Cat.
Ooh, dragons. Yes. This is another one. We were heavily inspired by a lot of the cartoons that we watched, whether it be Voltron, Ronin Warriors. I was out. What were the other?
Actually, so let me set the stage. It's July 4th of 1995. I had just turned 18 on that day. Power Rangers, the movie, had come out in theaters. We were too old for Power Rangers, but we recognized it as, this is cool, this generation has their Voltron. Awesome, good for them. And as a joke, we were like, what if we did, because so many of our things are homages to the things we like, we're like, what if we did a Voltron? What if we did a Power Rangers? And it started as a parody where we're like, how ridiculous are the things? We could have it's instead of saber-toothed tiger and Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's kangaroo, sloth, snake.
That would have been great.
How did those things merge? That's weird. And then we sat down and started thinking about it seriously of how do you take that kind of story about five kind of color-themed characters that have some five beast mount things that are strong individually, but when they come together are stronger. And we were both D&D fans and decided, what if we just did it with the chromatic dragons from D&D? And that they never actually do the Voltron Power Rangers forming, it's just together when they're all in the same spot is how they become powerful.
Yeah, so some of these initial drawings that I did of the dragons.
Those are mine.
Are they?
Except for Loden. The green one's yours.
No, the green one's mine. No, the white one's mine.
No, it's not. That's mine.
Fine, whatever, it's yours. Green one's mine. White. I also did the blue one, but he didn't show
He did the
that.
blue one, but I didn't put it up there.
Takes all the credit. Anyway,
To be fair, the sheet of paper that the blue one is on it got in a water-damaged box and has spots of fluorescent fuchsia mold all over it right now. So
Photoshop.
I'm sorry I didn't want that on my scanner bed.
Yeah. So we had some of the initial drawings of the dragons. I had some somewhere. I had some other ones. Dave would like to show those.
No.
And here's the characters.
They're all your human character
okay,
designs.
I'll do the humans. So yeah, we gave them kind of suits of armor that were trying to keep a slightly medieval feel, but based in some sort of technology.
Very much like how Voltron, they were in a castle, but it was like a sci-fi castle.
Like He-Man. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That blend.
A technology barbarian.
Yeah. And yeah, I had forgotten about Ronin Warriors until we were digging stuff up for this episode, and Jesse was like, I think I was really basing the armor on Ronin Warriors, which is an anime cartoon that was out around that time. So, genre shifting again. When I decided to do, you guys are getting a preview of a future episode. When I decided to do my redo of it, I went, I don't want to do any of the sci-fi thing. I actually think this thing would work better as a straight up fantasy. I'd rather do traditional medieval armor, traditional D&D style magic, not technology magic kind of stuff. And then decided to play with some heraldry in the background to give it even more world building kind of stuff than just like a cliche anime.
Yeah.
And then I've been pushing my dragon designs a little further, looking at actual animals to try to get to where we were going. I don't have an old version of Loden here. We just have that one. But there was an in-between one. Jesse actually drew him first, where he based the body on an elephant.
Yeah, he had really fat, stumpy feet.
We were like, what if we made him fat? What if we made the green dragon like just a fat, land-based, lumbering thing with teeny tiny wings? So I looked at alligators and some stuff like that and just decided to really play up the fantasy beast world building aspect, because that's my thing. Jesse's still working on his dragons piece.
Yeah, whereas one thing Dave mentioned is like in the past, the Plotmasters project things we've done, he's stayed true to the original theme, and he's changing it up on this one, taking more fantasy. With this particular one, I'm going to try to stick to the original idea a little bit more and keep some of that odd sci-fi tech in the fantasy.
Yeah.
But I'm not done yet. All right.
Another kind of way to revisit something and figure out what's working and what's not is to do a medium change. So this was a project that we had called the Beanie Squad, and if you haven't recognized us yet, we based a lot of characters on ourselves, and there was always a me character and a Jesse character, and then all the other friends. There's a Mike and a Nick and Jesse's sister Anne and Lawrence there. And Nick, the guy in the blue, had come up with this. He was a big anime fan, and he was like, I had this dream. It was like an anime thing, and we were sitting in my kitchen, and this silver lady came bursting out of the stove and gave us all magic beanies that made us protectors of the Infoverse, or so, I forget what he said, but it was like the cosmic expanse. And we were like, okay, that's fun. So because it was always kind of anime influenced, Jesse and I always talked about it as though it was animated, but we weren't really, so we drew it. But back then I had access to a computer animation program called Disney Animation Studio. And we did some animation. Jesse did the really hard stuff with the Gatling guns and the missile launcher.
Yeah.
But after doing that, we realized how hard animation is and how much time it takes. And so the idea of developing Beanie Squad, we knew we couldn't do it as animation, really, other than just talking about it that way. So the next time I happened to have drawn the Beanie Squad characters, I'm not really an anime manga guy, but I looked at some of Adam Warren's work, and I wonder what it would kind of look like in that style. This was probably around the time I was graduating college, and did that version. But just recently, I was thinking about the characters moving again, and that's always how we intended them. And I know that animation is hard, but potentially pixel animation gets cycled easier. So I found a quick pixel editor, and I did some quick versions of each of the characters. And even got into what it would be like to make them move, to see if maybe we could do a quick demo of a game just having the Beanie Squad characters hopping around. Turns out I'm not going to do that, because that also takes way more time than I thought. But the idea of changing what medium it is made a difference. I don't think these characters work as well when they're drawn as they do when they're moving.
Yeah, so it's just to say that sometimes you have a project and you have characters that you really, really like, but maybe drawing them out in panels isn't working for you. But hold on to them, because you might find another use for them somewhere along the line.
This is one of the oldest characters I ever drew, Captain Transfo, because he could change his hand or his legs into that metal bucket thing that could shoot fire or have grappling hooks or chainsaws or whatever. And, oh, what? Okay. slides are kind of weird in order. So, okay, never mind Cap Transfo, really, other than that he exists. There's a dude that exists.
Yep, there's that guy.
And a friend of ours, Mike Davis, kind of a tangential plot master, he had this idea for a sci-fi kind of thing that he so cleverly named R Wars, like the letter R dash Wars, right? Great. But I liked the characters that Mike was coming up with, and of course we all needed our own version. There had to be a me character, there had to be a Jesse character. And the character off to the left, the little weasel, was Jesse's first attempt, the little space weasel, was Jesse's first attempt at the me character. And
I don't know what inspired me to do the crazy little weird red weasel thing, but I liked it. It was hilarious.
But the problem was, we both have tried redrawing this character.
It's not possible.
And there's something magic in that drawing that we've never been. Every time we draw it, it's like, no, that looks too much like a real weasel. No, that looks too much like an alien. No, there's some life missing out of that. So I just decided, totally scrap him. I'm doing my own version of his name's Zubelflex. He's a Zubelflexian. So that's Zubelflex. And we ended up getting a whole cast of characters there. Cap Transfo, Sal the Salamander, the only human character, Davis, J-Man, which was Jesse's character, and my scrappy furry space pilot, Zubelflex. But when I was thinking about these characters maybe 5 years ago and how they would translate, the idea of doing them in this kind of slick comic style didn't appeal to me anymore. I thought what made more sense would be if they were translated into something that Jim Henson Studios would make. And because of the different scales of the character, J-Man, who was always this massive furry character, every time we drew him, we actually made him bigger.
Bigger every time.
And I thought, what if he was kind of the big bird, bear in the big blue house style puppet thing, where the head is controlled like this, and he lumbers and moves like that, and he's bigger than every other scaled character. Zubelflex, all the way off to the left, could be something more like how the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, some of the characters that you see in the Hellboy movies, where the head is an animatronic, but all the rest of the body movements are human. And then Sal and Cap, the two in the center, would be hand puppets, and the legs and everything would be moved by rods or other performers. And that Davis, the kid, would be the only human in the cast. And redesigning these characters to be performers inside of suits and giving them texture and sympathetic movement with fur made all the difference. It's like, that's the only way I want to see these characters now, is as a live action puppet thing, rather than drawing them. I don't know that I ever want to draw them again, other than to just define how they should look as puppets.
Yes. So, some number of years ago, we had Halloween, and we needed costumes, and I grabbed some old shirts, I cut up the sleeves, some t-shirts, some honors sashes and cords, and jester's hats. We got some makeup, and we became jesters for that day. And again, in the spirit of making characters based on ourselves, it's like, what would it be like to have these two guys actually go on adventures in medieval times, and what would they be doing? And it's like, they're jesters, but they're not really jesters. They're like the king's secret bodyguards that they dress up so they can hang out at court. But
no one suspects the fools.
Yeah.
Right? But this is a media shift, because these characters started as costumes. And actually the reason why we chose these costumes was a friend's mom. I was first year of college here. A friend's mom was having a very adult Halloween party, but we were told that we could get in if the theme was all the people who were helping, all the helpers, people who would take coats or make sure that the drinks are refilled and everything, had to be some kind of clown, and then you could get in. She'd let us kids into her party. And so Jesse actually did the costumes and was like, hey, if we come as jesters, we can get into this party for free.
Yeah,
so so it started as costumes just as a way to get into a party, an adult party. But yeah, I started thinking about this as a story and came up with the fool, the King's Fools. And I've redrawn them a few times since, one time paying very specific homage to the direct costumes that we wore. And then another time going, maybe I can push it further. Why do I have to be such a slave to what we had? Maybe I can play up some of the styles. Jester's hat was very droopy and long in the original photo, and mine had very kind of perky little bell shapes. And so in this, I feel like I played up some of that a little bit more, where more of his costume is drooped and more of mine is taut and pert.
Drastic departures. Sometimes you have an idea, sometimes you have a project that at first you really love. Maybe something happens with it, maybe you make a choice and it starts to lose its fire. It starts to lose something that you don't like. And
It's not working.
And you can either scrap it, start over, you can try to fix it, or just like, okay, take what is this one piece of it? What is the heart of it? What is the thing I like the most? I need this thing right here. And just scrap the rest of it.
It's the kill your darlings. You get rid of everything that's not working in favor of trying to salvage the project.
Yeah. So this is a project I had come up with mostly on my own, and there's one guy who's kind of based off of me because we do that. But I had patched.
The dude with the black hair and the beard, by the way, is not me.
No, that's actually not a
That was before I had a beard.
Yeah, so I had these characters, and I had this team of it was called PKSO, Psychokinetic Special Operations, and they had like mental powers, and they were like the CIA or the FBI or something like that. And I had been working on it. I had come up with these ideas and these characters, and I really liked the direction it was going. And then I started working on it with another friend who wanted to offer some story ideas and work because he was an aspiring writer. And we started kind of working on it and talking about some things, and it went in a direction that at first was kind of cool. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
I can?
Yeah. And so it ended up, we kind of took the Jesse character out, kept two of the others. He added two new characters that he had written in, and added the villain, and the whole thing kind of just went off in a different direction. And then, just as is like many of the projects that we started when we were young, it kind of fizzled out and it got set aside. And I kind of lost a little bit of interest with it, and we got time. When we were looking at reviewing things for Plotmasters, like, is this going to be a thing? Actually, no, it was before that. Go to the next slide. This is where the huge departure happened with me. I had this old project sitting, and I did Inktober last year. So that picture on the right is just one of the images that I did for Inktober, just off of a prompt list. And I was like, who is this woman? I really like her. She just beat up a hall full of guys in the back there. I want to do something with her or with a character like her. So I did a few character redesigns based off of that. I changed some aspects of her look, her ethnicity, just finding the right character. And it's like, where do I put her? What do I do with her? I gave her a partner. This is a girl in the upper left there. And I said, you know what this would be good for? This would be good for that project I did all those years ago with all those guy characters that this friend and I worked on, and I don't want any of that though. I want to keep, these are my two new main characters. I want to keep the idea of like the type of organization they work for, and I want to go in a completely different direction with it and give it some really new life. Go ahead. And so I kind of mocked up a poster for the two of them. And what this did for me in thinking about this project is where the previous one had gotten really stilted and boring for me. This one, with these characters and their designs, just popped with life, popped with color, made it a much more lightweight story that I could focus on these two characters and just go forward and have fun. And honestly, it was potentially going to be a comic. I had gotten to the point, I just launched a comic on Webtoons Thursday called Drop Off, and it's a space adventure. But I had like 3 different ideas, and this was actually one of the 3. It's like, I need to choose one. I had gotten so much more interest in life out of that just from doing that Inktober and then transferring it into this old story. I had started enjoying it so much more that it was one of my 3 potentials for actually producing.
So my ultimate version of the Kill Your Darlings kind of revisit was that before Mouse Guard was Mouse Guard, I had a talking animal thing in high school called 1149. It was very heavily influenced on Disney's Robin Hood and Looney Tunes that I was watching at the time. And it had a duck character and a fox character and a bear and a ferret and even a tiger. But it wasn't until 1996 that I even started adding mice. And when I started adding mice, I started drawing it more like a children's book instead of an animated thing. And then I ended up getting rid of all the other species as characters in the book. And it's what became Mouse Guard. And that was a hard decision because I liked some of those other characters. I liked some of the stuff that I was doing with the other talking animals. But the idea of the mice being the protagonist, the mice being the focus, because once you understand the plight of the mouse in a Mouse Guard story where they're the smallest thing, everything is out to get them. They are the smallest. Why do you care about the plight of the fox? Now, maybe it takes a more talented writer than me to get you to care about the plight of the fox while you're still worried about the plight of the mouse. But I decided that was the more important thing, was to get the reader really hooked and invested in these characters and worried for their safety. And so while I liked the other stuff, I got rid of it. I scrapped it. I made it background stuff. They're the predators. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Please follow us on either Facebook or Twitter. And go to theplotmasters.com to catch up on episodes. There's 2 episodes out already, and the 3rd one goes live on Monday. Mm-hmm. Any questions? Yeah.
Where do you guys get your inspiration today for the stuff you're working on?
Today, I get my inspiration just from working. Unlike Dave, I have not been in an art career for a while. I was working at a theater. I was doing a lot of technical theater and theater management. I still did a bit of drawing here and there, but it was only 4 years ago that I started getting back into drawing hardcore, really, because I started doing some freelance illustration for a friend of ours who opened a brewery, and all the beers have comic character type labels. So I started doing that, and it's just that getting myself back to work has inspired me to work and inspired me to do characters. It's like I watch movies and I read books and all of that stuff, but I don't think that right now I can't pick out any one thing like that inspires me. But just sitting down to do the work and just sketching and doodling, and sometimes I'll have this freelance job, I have this character for this beer that I have to do, and so I have to make something up, and maybe something I work on, maybe something I've done for that project sticks in my head, and it's like, I can use some element of that for my own thing and do my own drawing. So it's just sitting down at my desk and just drawing kind of inspires me to keep going. Just seeing where I can go and seeing what I've done, because I haven't been in it for a while. So I'm getting back into drawing and dusting off my skills and my tools and everything. So that's a lot of my inspiration.
I tend to do a lot of audiobooks, and I also if you're into audiobooks, you know that some audiobooks are fantastic and some are terrible, even if the book is good, just because it's the wrong narrator or it's the wrong pace or whatever. So when I find an audiobook that I both like the content and the reader, I tend to listen to them over and over. So I've done the entire 7-book Potter series like probably a dozen times. I've done it about 10 times, 14 times, somewhere in there. Spiderwick with Mark Hamill narrating it. And by listening to those kind of stories over and over and over, the benefit is I start dissecting some things, or you start realizing some of the building blocks of how the author is setting up the story or revealing things to you that maybe just the first time you're just enjoying it as a story. But once you start kind of dissecting it, you're like, man, that's inspiring. I have to figure out how, not necessarily to steal that, but I have to figure out how to do my own version of building this stuff up better. I have to be more careful with how I'm telling stories, how I'm revealing things to the audience, how I'm showing my character's motivation without tipping their hand. So that's what it is when it comes to stories. And then when it comes to my artwork, it's looking at contemporaries who I mean, I have my heroes who are up on a pedestal, but and even some of my heroes I've gotten this chance with, but it's my contemporaries that I actually get to go and talk to at conventions or have online relationships with. Scotty Young, who's in the audience, but Gabe Rodriguez, Jeremy Bastian, I know I'm forgetting others, Nate Pride, people who do fantastic, especially ink work, and looking at the line quality and how they're able to get a character or a line or a figure or a subject to pop out against a background, how they're able to get contrast through contour line, through contrast of shape, through texture, whatever it is they're doing. And just try to figure out how to apply that to my own work. Like, it's inspiring when you see Gabe Rodriguez do architecture and not make it, and then put a character in there and not make it look like it's superimposed. Like, it's very rigid, architectural. You know, he was an architect, so the drawing could be very stilted and look almost like a photograph or a technical drawing, and then when he draws a character on top of it, it almost feels like it should be a type mismatch, and it's not. So to see that kind of stuff just inspires the hell out of me to try to make my work better.
I enjoy something else that inspires is having people like that to work with. Not just seeing the work that they put out, but David and I have a group back in Michigan. That is he and I and Jeremy Bastian and Katie Cook and Jay Foskett. Hey, and it's like on a weekly basis, you get together with these people and you go out to dinner and then you sit in a room and you just draw with these people. And it's like these other people who are fabulous artists, and you just, it's not like you're look, what are you doing? How are you doing that? It's like we just sit there and draw, but we talk. We talk about what influences us. We talk about movies. We talk about our day. We talk about the news. And it's just, but that camaraderie and that socializing of being with other artists.
This doesn't happen quite as much as it used to, but in the earlier days of Art Night, and it still happens from time to time, any one of us could be stuck on something. Like, man, I don't know how to get this page to work. I can't, the way the panels are arranged, I need this panel to be big and I need this panel to be big, but I need them both to happen on the same page. And there's just not enough real estate. How do I solve this problem? And just the other people chiming in, sometimes their answers are dead wrong. Like, either that will not work at all, you clearly didn't understand what my problem was, or that's a solution, but that's not in my wheelhouse, that's not my solution. But just getting that dialogue going really helps. And actually, Jeremy Bastian has been fantastic. Jeremy Bastian has saved me on a couple issues of Mouse Guard where I was stuck, and he's just like, "Oh, dude, why don't you just do this?" And I was like, "What? Oh my God, that's brilliant!" Yeah, it did sound like Jeremy, didn't it? Yeah, the last issue of Fall, I was stuck on page 3. And it wasn't just page 3. It was like, how do I go forward from here? I think I boxed myself in a weird way. And he had already done a pinup. And one, he was just trying to encourage me. I was trying to take a little bit of the easy way out. But he was like, why would you show the thing that no one wants to see just because it's easier to draw? Show the really cool thing that everybody wants to see and suck it up. And then he showed me, I had seen his pinup, and I had some issues. Like, I have this whole army outside the gates of Lockhaven, and I kind of need them to go away. Like, they had to be there for a threat for a little while, but I need to get rid of them. And I don't know how to just massively get rid of them. And in Jeremy's pinup, he had drawn a bee, just as an ornamental device. And it was like, why don't I include a hive of bees that comes out and stings a bunch of them and makes the whole horde just run away? And he has a portrait of Kellenaw, or of the Black Axe in his piece, and that's how the idea of Kellenaw being revealed through the portrait door, if you've spoilers if you haven't read Fall, but that all came out of his pinup and out of that one lunch. It was him telling me to take the harder road, and then me thinking, if he has all the ideas, I bet you more of them are hidden in his pinup. And we talked through how to work those in so it didn't feel forced. And it ended up saving my butt, not just on that issue, but making the whole book of Fall work out. So having those kind of conversations, obviously, yeah, definitely. Working with people. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yeah.
You guys mentioned that you had switched to drawing digitally. What do you guys use for a tablet program? How does that work?
I'll answer that question, I guess. Dave still,
I color with a mouse.
yeah, he still does his traditional inks and pencils, but yeah, colors with the mouse. I am actually a low-tech digital artist. You can get great results with minimal things, but I have an old, just a bamboo draw tablet. It's the one with the lowest pressure sensitivity. It's like 10,000 or 1,000 something, where the Cintiqs and the base was 2,000 something for a while, and now it's 8. So it's just a pretty simple one. It's not a monitor tablet that you can see. It's just I draw with it. But like for a program, I know it got dark in here. All right. Like Photoshop is the industry standard, but I use Clip Studio Paint, which has started out as Manga Studio, which was like mostly a black and white drawing program, but really great for laying out panels and then inking and then mimicking zip tone digitally. But it has grown into an amazing digital program for artists, and I've been seeing a lot more people adopting it because it kept that base core of what you want for panels and word balloons and line art, clean line art. It's like it kept all of that and honed that, but then took the bits and pieces of Photoshop that people were using for coloring and image adjusting and added that functionality to it, and it makes it a very lean program designed for artists, comic artists specifically. But you can do a lot of digital painting with it as well, and that's basically my setup.
So when people ask about art supplies and like what do you use and everything, I'm a big proponent of whatever works for you. Like if you can do amazing drawings using a big ballpoint pen, go for it. There's no reason not to. I'm not going to be an art snob and tell you this is the fancy pen you should use. If you can do amazing stuff with crayons or oil pastels or whatever, that's fine. There's no reason you can't use something else. With digital, it seems like there's a lot less in terms of technology, of the hardware, and even in some of the software, base software that you can use. There's infinite settings, but it's going to be kind of down to 2 or 3 different types of tablets. It's going to come down to 2 or 3 different types of programs. So in that way, it's way easier to try to find what works for you than it is in traditional media, where like literally anything that makes a mark is a fair tool. And then if you're curious about all those settings and stuff and what works and what doesn't, start going on Twitch and watching artists who are doing digital painting. You'll find that most of them are ready to answer your questions and help you with what are they doing or how are they doing it or what kind of sensitivity, where did you get that brush pack, all of that kind of stuff. And you can see a really wide variety of who uses what settings, who uses which program, who uses which program with which tablet. And then there's all kinds of different digital coloring techniques, whether you're actually painting or using dodge and burn or all those kind of things. And getting a sampling of whose work you like and seeing what they're doing, I think, is a good jumping off point. Jesse streams on Twitch a couple times a week. We have friends Comfort and Adam who do Twitch 2 or 3 times a week, and they do a lot of digital drawing and digital coloring. Eric Canetti has started doing, he does some traditional stuff on his Twitch, some digital, but and there's hundreds if not thousands more out there, but I would say those 3 are really good. That's going to give you a nice swath of difference and similarity of people who could answer your question, where you can get kind of a baseline. Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys for coming out.